Let me guess. You're staring out at your yard and it's a sad patch of brownness and weeds. And right now it's going into spring. You'd really never know it by looking at our situation, but it is going into spring and you're trying to figure out what products you need to do, what technique you need to use, or what you need to do in order to get your yard going. But what if I were to tell you that you're probably about to waste a whole lot of time and money that you don't need to? What if the key to a green, lush yard is really just mastering, or not even mastering, but being consistent with these two simple fundamentals? Everything else is just secondary to these two fundamentals. In this video, I'm going to tell you those two fundamentals that you need to have absolutely nailed and dialed before you even think about buying any products. If you get these two things right, then everything becomes so much simpler. The first and most important fundamental of basic lawn care is consistent mowing. I know that just sounds way too simple and kind of a, well, duh. But that's where the work really comes in. Regular mowing is what trains the yard and the grass to grow thicker and become more dense. And with a thicker, more dense yard, you're naturally choking out the weeds and not giving them a place to thrive. It's not always about looking tidy. It's about building a healthier lawn. And the first step to that is consistent mowing. Now, to do this right, you've probably heard of the 1/3 rule. And the 1/3 rule, for those of you that haven't heard this before, is at any given mow session, you don't want to take off more than 1/3 of that active growing part of the blade. If you take off more than that 1/3, then you're whacking off the part of the grass blade that provides the energy to the plant. And this can put your yard very quickly into stress, and stress could lead to potentially browning, dying, and just a sad looking yard. So you want to try to eliminate as much stress as possible. So that 1/3 rule is a good guideline to go into. I'll talk about a little bit more why I say more of a guideline and kind of rule in quotations in just a minute here. So what does consistent mowing look like? And that's going to ebb and flow depending on your region. So for me, with my cool season grass types, it has kind of two growing seasons. In the spring, it's cranking, it's growing a lot, and then it kind of goes not dormant, but it definitely tapers off during the hot summer months. And then it picks up again kind of in that around Labor Day when the temperatures come down again, and then it kind of has another wave of growth throughout the rest of the season, and then it goes into full dormancy later in the fall going into winter. So what that looks like in the spring and in those fall, the peak times that my yard is cranking is, I might be mowing every 3 days. So that's where you have to put in the work to be consistent. It's not necessarily I get to mow once a week or once every 10 days, 14 days, because you're probably going to be chopping off more than that 1/3 of the grass blade. Now, mowing height is also something that is pretty critical too. If you cut it too short, again, you're taking off the part of the plant that energy and produces the food. So you cut that off, the plant really has nowhere to thrive. You leave it too long, and you could just be asking for more disease pressure. You get some mold, you get just various diseases. So you got to try to find kind of that happy medium. For most cool season grasses, as kind of another guideline, your cool season grasses being your fescue, your perennial rye, your Kentucky bluegrasses, they're gonna like to be cut probably around that 3 to 4 inches during the peak part of the season, and even during the summertime as well, when it's not growing quite as much. Now, cutting stuff a little bit longer kind of has some other good benefits to it as well. If you're cutting it higher, you're kind of providing a little bit more shade to that soil, so help retain water from, evaporation and your sunlight. And then it can also shade out those weed seeds to not let them become as easily established. And just a little bit of a quick tip: if you just set your mower to one of the highest settings, then you're probably pretty good to go. Now, for that 3 to 4 inches is kind of like a guideline, kind of like the 1/3 rule. For me and my situation that I have is I cut mine at about 2.5 inches most of the time. I might go a little bit shorter in the beginning parts of the season, but pretty much all when it's really cranking, I'm about that 2.5. For me and my Mod Podge of grass types that I have, if I go to that 3 or 4, it just starts getting really shaggy looking. It doesn't really stand up straight anymore. It's starting to kind of just lay over. So I like the look of that 2.5. If I go down to 2, if I go down to 2, it's practically a scalp, and I can't even go past a 2 on my lawnmower just because of how uneven my grass is or whatever, and just burns all the time. So for me and my lawn, what I got going on, 2.5 is my sweet spot and what I like. And honestly, just listen to your yard, see what it likes to do, play with that height, see what happens. Realistically, unless you're burning it all, you're not going to do a bunch of damage to it. You might have little patches or whatever, but grass is pretty resilient for the most part. So just listen to your yard and whatever you like. And another kind of, I'm not gonna say pro tip because I'm not a pro, but another quick tip here is, with the consistent mowing being a fundamental, number one fundamental, also having sharp blades on that lawnmower will make your cuts look a lot better, and then B, sharp blades, you get a nice slice on that grass blade, rather than if they're dull blades, you might not even get a cut on that blade, or you're kind of just making it really jagged or raggedy. So a cleaner cut looks better, it's better for the plant, and just make sure you have sharp blades. They're relatively inexpensive if you need to get new ones, and they're pretty easy to sharpen either yourself or have a business take care of that. But sharp blades is also kind of a paramount part with your fundamental number one. Okay, so now that you're a mowing extraordinaire and you're like, you know what, yes, I can be consistent even during the times where I might have to mow every 2 or 3 days, and I'm ready to put the work into being at least consistent and have that baseline fundamental. All right, here is the second most important fundamental to lawn care, and that is watering properly. And this is where people, I think, probably go wrong the most, is either they're watering not enough or at all, or they're watering too often. And maybe it's even as simple as just watering at the wrong time of the day. Now, for the fundamental basic part or goal is to, and you might have heard this, is water about 1 inch to 1.5 inches per week. And that also includes any rain that you get during that weekly period as well. Strive to water deeply, but infrequently, instead of a light daily little sprinkle. Now, what this watering deeply does is it tells the plant to reach further down into the soil for that water. If you're only watering a couple times, then that plant's got to develop good roots in order to thrive. And to pretty much any plant out there, there's so much that happens below the soil that obviously we can't see as humans. So you want to have that healthy root system in order to have that luscious top growth. In my opinion, this deep and infrequent watering is probably better suited for someone that doesn't have automatic sprinklers. And I say this because of the fact of having to make sure that you're lugging around your hose at proper intervals and making sure you're getting your whole yard, and making sure that one area didn't, oh man, I left it over there for an extra 20 minutes and it's got, say an inch of water on it in just this one watering. And it's a lot harder if you don't have the automatic sprinklers set in to be more diligent and consistent on like a daily basis than those with automatic sprinklers. And I'll get to more of that in just a minute. The time of day to water is also kind of non-negotiable, really. And the optimal time to do that is between probably 4 or 5 a.m. to about 10 a.m. The air at this time is typically cooler, the wind is usually relatively calm, and the sun is low, which means there's a lot less water that's going to get evaporated into the air after you put it onto your grass. Watering in the afternoon, the peak heat of the day, is really just wasteful. And then if you water over at night, you're just increasing your risk of introducing more fungal issues and disease pressure. That is not necessarily needed either. Now, I get sometimes too that depending on where you're at, places you get hamstrung by your water provider or whatever in peak heat of the summer. So obviously if you're bound by whatever that looks like, then it kind of, you're doing what you can and it kind of is what it is. So kind of managing your expectations based on that information, considering the fact that this is kind of a fundamental part of having a lush green yard. And if you don't know if you're hitting that 1 to 1.5 inch target, something that you can do is you can just get a tuna can and set that out in your yard and time and see how long it takes your sprinklers to fill that up. And then that way you kind of have a good baseline for what your timing needs to be to hit those water quantities. And like I said in the previous fundamental, number one with consistent mowing, is read your yard. So something that I do, another shoot from the hip kind of strategy, and again, my current strategy is when it comes to water, I read my yard. If it's looking a little brown during the summer months, I increase my sprinklers a little bit. Something that I didn't mention is I have automatic in-ground sprinklers. So for me, it's relatively easy to get that, full coverage and be able to really monitor my water output. So if you're seeing some brown spots in your yard, try watering a little bit more. And if in a couple days you don't really see it starting to turn color again, then there could be a more in-depth situation of or cause to why it's starting to brown, and that's outside the scope of this video. Yeah, try giving a little bit more water and see what happens. And if you feel like you're watering too much, trying to play that 1 to 1.5 inch a week guideline, then just dial it back. And if it stays green, perfect. If it doesn't, then you now kind of know where your threshold is and what your lawn likes to be green, or it doesn't, to whatever you as the manager of your grass, whatever you like it to look like. In my yard, if I go down to a 5-minute per zone from a usually about 8 to 10 minute per zone, I can notice a pretty significant difference in the color of my yard. And all of my sprinklers are all, the heads on all of them are about 0.4 inches per hour sprinkler head for reference. Now, granted, I have an array of different types of grass in my yard. So there's definitely parts of my yard that is a certain grass type that, yeah, it will start to brown a lot faster than other parts. Now, that's just a reality of my situation. And typically, I'm playing towards the grass type that's probably going to start browning first. So, am I overwatering other grass types compared to others? Probably. But yet again, I'm just dealing with what I have in my yard currently. I just haven't gotten the gumption quite yet to want to kill off an entire part of my yard and do a renovation to have that one seagrass type. I'd love it. And as we get closer and closer to the lawn care season, then more and more I'm just thinking about that in the fall. So don't worry, you guys will come along that journey if we get there. But yeah, just listening to my lawn and seeing what it likes and what it doesn't like when it comes to water. If this video helped you simplify a few things, then give me a thumbs up, and feel free to give me a follow for more videos to help you build this foundation for lawn care. And in the comments, let me know something that you struggle with in your lawn, or what fundamentals that you struggle with. I'd like to be able to help you out in any way that I can. Look, before you spend another dime on fertilizers, weed killers, or any type of program out there, you need to have these two fundamentals absolutely dialed. Consistent mowing and watering properly are the absolute bedrock to any lawn care out there. Argue with me in the comments, go for it, but those are the two things I'm dying on the hill on. And once you have these two habits dialed, then everything else that you do above and beyond your weed killers, your fertilizers, your programs are going to be so much more, exponentially more effective. Now get out there and build that foundation and watch your yard transform. It's not rocket science. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that's intertwined, but it's about tweaking the little things here and there to get your yard looking the way that you want it to look. There's no one size fits all approach to this lawn care game, but the fundamentals cannot be argued. And with that, Weekend Yard Guy out.